After being in cryogenic sleep for 20 years, the girl woke up to find that her appearance had remained unchanged despite the passage of time. She stumbled out of the laboratory and made her way to a bus station. When she tried to pay for a ticket with 500 won, she was informed by the driver that the cost had risen to 1300 won. Confused, she couldn't comprehend why the fare had increased so dramatically. Unaware that 2 decades had elapsed, she was allowed to stay on the bus, as the driver assumed she had simply forgotten enough money. Upon arriving home, she discovered her house was empty. She feared her parents might have been evicted due to financial difficulties. She attempted to use her old cell phone to reach her family, only to find it was completely outdated and inoperable. Seeking help, she visited a phone repair shop, but the technician deemed the phone irreparable and obsolete. With no other options, she went to the police station and reported that her family had vanished overnight. The officers asked her for identification. Nervously, she emptied her bag and handed over her ID. They were astonished to see that, according to her ID, she was born in 1976 and should now be 44 years old, though she appeared much younger. The police managed to contact her mother and left a message. Hearing her daughter's voice after 2 decades, her mother burst into tears. Her father and younger brother rushed to the station, overwhelmed with emotion. The police informed them that Miran had been seen at her school. They hurried there and found her sitting in a classroom, bewildered by the technology and modern slang around her. The sight of a banner reading, 3rd semester, 2019, and students wearing 2019-themed shirts made her realize she had been frozen for 20 years. Before she could fully process this, her adult younger brother's voice called out. Despite the years, she instantly recognized him. They embraced, both weeping with joy and relief. Her brother took her home, where Miran found her room exactly as she had left it, untouched for 2 decades. Overcome with emotion, she cried, deeply moved that her family had preserved her memory all this time. Despite the long absence, her family had never given up hope. But what caused all this? Actually, Miran had agreed to participate in a 24-hour freezing experiment with hopes of earning 500,000 won. She made this choice to support her mentally disabled brother, who needed money for surgery. Unfortunately, an accident involving the professor in charge extended the experiment from 24 hours to 20 years. As a university student from a low-income background, Miran had been working multiple part-time jobs to support her family. Dong Chan, a variety show director at a TV station, approached her with an offer of 500,000 won to join the hibernation study. Miran accepted immediately, wanting to help her brother. Dong Chan aimed to test the program's validity and ended up causing Miran to be in hibernation for 2 decades. The professor suddenly awoke, disoriented and confused. He stumbled over to a wall, opened the freezer, took out several vials of medicine, mixed them, and filled a syringe. After performing a series of actions on the machine, it stopped, and the freezer rapidly warmed up, causing the ice to melt. Soon, the freezer opened on its own, and the professor injected the medicine into the arms of both individuals. After completing these tasks, he staggered a few steps and then collapsed. The hearts of the 2 people began to beat again, and their blood vessels appeared to be functioning normally. Miran's hands moved, and she started breathing again. Even after 20 years in the freezer, her appearance remained unchanged. She still looked 24 years old. Upon returning home, Miran was devastated to find that she had lost 20 years of her life and struggled to accept it. Infuriated, she went to the TV station with her letter of guarantee. Those who recognized her were astonished. Miran bypassed them and went directly to Dong Chan, delivering a painful slap. She yelled, "Give me back 20 years. You are responsible for my lost life." Onlookers watched in curiosity. Dong Chan quickly took Miran to a private location to talk. Miran demanded an explanation, and Dong Chan, who had recently woken up himself, was visibly distressed. They spoke and cried together, eventually calming down. Miran then presented the guarantee paper issued by the TV station's president 20 years earlier. After reviewing it, Miran demanded compensation from the station. Using a calculator, she determined that 24 hours of freezing equated to 500,000 won, or 21,000 won per hour. For 20 years, this amounted to an astronomical 70 billion won. The 3 of them were stunned. Even if the TV station were sold, it couldn't cover that amount. The chairman proposed that the compensation could be paid in installments to address the issue. Miran decided to return to school to complete her studies. She informed her teacher that she wanted to retake her Chinese literature course from 1996. The teacher was taken aback. Returning to class dressed in 20th century style, Miran successfully attracted the attention of a boy who even offered her a drink. When a professor entered and saw Miran, he was terrified, as he was her ex-boyfriend, the man who had betrayed her 20 years ago. Having miraculously revived after 2 decades, he staggered down the street, feeling dizzy, and eventually collapsed. Passers-by took him to the hospital. The doctor examined him. Although his pulse and breathing were normal, his body temperature was 31.5 degrees Celsius, well below the typical 36.5 degrees Celsius. The the doctor noted that his body temperature was unusually low. When Dongchan woke up, he panicked and wanted to leave, insisting he had filming commitments, but his frail body prevented him from doing so. The doctors measured his temperature with various devices, but it remained at 31.5 degrees Celsius. The doctor, still puzzled, struggled to contact Dongchan's deputy director. After providing the contact details, Dongchan immediately fainted. Meanwhile, Deputy Director Hyun Ji received a call from the hospital regarding Dongchan. Upon hearing Dongchan's name, his hands trembled. After ending the call, Hyun Ji quickly reached out to the president, and they both hurried to the hospital. Dongchan's family, upon hearing the news, also rushed to the hospital. They were astonished to see Dongchan looking youthful. His appearance was both familiar and strange to them. Dongchan, disoriented, fainted after uttering a single sentence. When he came to, he noticed his elderly mother beside him and questioned why she had aged so much overnight. His father, now looking younger than Dongchan remembered, and an aunt referred to him as brother. Dongchan was stunned and at a loss for words. An elderly man addressed him as senior and introduced himself as Hyun Ji. Completely confused, Dongchan dashed out of the hospital room and into the lobby, where he discovered the year was 2019. Although it was hard to accept, he finally came to terms with the fact that he had been in hibernation for 20 years. Recalling Miran, who had undergone the experiment with him, Dongchan asked Hyun Ji to locate her home address, but her house was now deserted. Dongchan then returned home with his family. During his 20-year absence, significant changes had occurred. His younger siblings had exhausted their savings, and the family had opened a grill shop to survive. His younger brother was now married with a lovely daughter, and his father had passed away a few years earlier. The family was curious about Dongchan's prolonged absence but chose not to question him. Dongchan was thankful to be back with his family. Eager to understand why he awoke after 20 years, Dongchan visited the lab. There, he met the professor's assistant, who promptly took him to see the professor. The assistant explained that the professor had lost his memory and had used his remaining strength to awaken them. He had concealed their information because someone had deliberately caused the professor's car to explode years ago. If people knew the professor was still alive, they would attempt to kill him. The situation would only become clear once the professor regained his memory. Dongchan resumed his job at the television station. On his first day back, a junior employee approached him to teach him the ropes, even critiquing his appearance. Hyun Ji entered and showed deep respect for Dongchan. Dongchan chastised Hyun Ji for how he treated his subordinates, and Hyun Ji quickly apologized. A nearby colleague was puzzled, questioning who Dongchan was to command such respect. 20 years earlier, Dongchan had been a renowned producer with numerous awards, and Hyun Ji had been his apprentice. Now that Dongchan was back, he suggested innovative ideas for game shows, such as merging documentaries with game shows to challenge celebrities. However, his colleagues dismissed these ideas as outdated. Determined to catch up with current trends, Dongchan asked Hyun Ji to watch game shows with him and teach him about computers. The following day, he visited the police station to investigate his disappearance. He was disheartened to find that none of those around him, including his girlfriend, had mentioned their involvement in the hibernation experiment. To avoid implicating the television station, Dongchan had concealed the truth about the experiment and had vanished for 20 years. He confronted Hyun Ji, questioning why he hadn't reported the hibernation experiment to the police, grabbing his collar and accusing him of selfishness. Dongchan sought out his former girlfriend from 20 years ago and questioned why she hadn't looked for him or acknowledged his disappearance. Ha-young, feeling a deep sense of guilt, revealed that she had spent the past 2 decades waiting for him, still unmarried. Despite her explanation, Dongchan struggled to forgive her, feeling deeply betrayed by the person he once loved most. Ha-young, in tears, pleaded for his forgiveness, but Dongchan remained silent, turned away, and left, reminiscing about the happy moments they once shared. Dongchan was uncertain about how to face Ha-young. Meanwhile, Miran, who had undergone the hibernation experiment with Dongchan, reached out to her old friends and arranged a reunion. They greeted each other with excited hugs and jumps. Noticing Miran's youthful appearance, her friends joked about her possibly having taken some miraculous potion. As Miran was nearing graduation, she applied for jobs but was rejected by an interviewer who saw her as a 44-year-old with no work experience. Angered by the rejection, Miran, who was actually only 24 due to her time in hibernation, sought Dongchan's help. She expressed her interest in working in radio and television, specifically wanting to join the game show team. Dongchan initially told her that she might not be a good fit for the job at the television station, but Miran's determination convinced him otherwise. He agreed to help her, though he also shared troubling news from the professor. The body temperature of someone who had been frozen was 31.5 degrees Celsius, and anything above 33 degrees Celsius could be dangerous. Despite being 44 years old, Miran's youthful appearance and charming smile impressed Dongchan. He gave her a cell phone as a token of thanks, and Miran introduced her best friend to him. Dongchan, finding their enthusiasm overwhelming, made an excuse to leave. Miran sent him a cute emoji with the new phone, which made Dong-chan smile. Upon arriving at the company, Dong-chan sought out Miran, who eagerly showed him the features of her new phone. Their eyes met, and there was a palpable sense of connection between them. Later that evening, after work, they went to the garage together. Suddenly, a man with a knife threatened Dong-chan, forcing him to raise his hands. They were locked in the trunk of a car. The kidnappers assumed Dong-chan and Miran would succumb to the cold in the trunk, but the pair stayed calm and conversed. When the car stopped at a deserted location, the kidnappers checked to see if they were still conscious. Demanding to know the whereabouts of Professor Huang, who was involved in the hibernation experiment, Dong-chan claimed ignorance. Despite the kidnappers' insistence and the cold affecting him, Dong-chan and Miran fought back. Miran grabbed the kidnapper's dropped phone while Dong-chan pulled the kidnapper's hair, and Miran kicked him. They managed to escape from the trunk and locked the kidnappers inside the car. Dong-chan threatened to call the police, which made the kidnappers flee in a panic. Despite their escape, Dong-chan and Miran had to walk home. As they walked, Miran's body temperature began to climb dangerously. Dong-chan quickly scooped her up and ran until he found a car. Using his remaining strength, he stopped the car and rushed Miran to the hospital. After receiving fever-reducing medication, Miran was stabilized. Dong-chan also poured cold water over himself to cool down. With Miran out of immediate danger, he felt a sense of relief. Dong-chan then sought out Professor Jo Kibyum, hoping for a solution to their temperature issues. Professor Jo Kibyum explained that restoring their body temperature to normal was only possible through methods known to Professor Huang, who was suffering from amnesia. With no clear timeline for Professor Huang's memory recovery, they had to find alternative solutions. Dong-chan purchased 2 monitoring devices to keep track of their temperatures and stocked up on fever-reducing medication, instructing Miran to carry it at all times. One day, as Miran was leaving her classroom, a professor blocked her path. He called her by name, revealing himself as her ex-boyfriend from 20 years ago who had betrayed her and now sought reconciliation. He unashamedly asked Miran to get back together, claiming her participation in the hibernation experiment was due to him. Annoyed, Miran told him they should never see each other again. The professor, Byung-shim, pinched Miran's cheek, calling her cute when angry, and expressed a desire to rekindle their romance. Miran, taken aback by his audacity, reminded him he was married. Byung-shim declared he would divorce his wife for her and embraced her tightly. Unable to tolerate his behavior, Miran grabbed her bag to hit him. They were both taken to the police station, where Byung-shim insisted that Miran shouldn't be punished. When the police inquired about their relationship, Byung-shim boldly claimed they would have a romantic future together. Miran firmly told the police that if she were to be punished, she would hit Byung-shim again. The police quickly intervened. Dong-chan arrived at the scene and advised Miran not to strike the professor, despite her anger. Upon learning that Byung-shim was Miran's ex, Dong-chan's stance changed. He agreed with Miran, saying it would have been better if she had incapacitated him. Dong-chan's anger escalated, and he confronted Byung-shim, warning him not to bother Miran again, or there would be consequences. Byung-shim, remaining defiant, ignored the warning, leading to a physical altercation. The police and others had to separate them. Dong-chan, disregarding Byung-shim, took Miran's hand and left the station. Byung-shim was left with a bruised face. The following day, Dong-chan and Miran visited a new filming location, taking numerous photos. Miran suggested exploring inside for a better spot. As the weather grew hotter, Dong-chan urged her to head back. They soon realized they were lost, and their body temperatures began to rise dangerously. The monitoring devices alerted them as their temperatures approached 33 degrees Celsius. Dong-chan prepared to give Miran her fever-reducing medication, but it was missing from her bag. She had forgotten it. Miran's breathing became rapid, and she lost consciousness. Dong-chan's body temperature also reached a critical level, but there was only 1 dose of medicine available. Without hesitation, he administered the medicine to Miran, which brought her temperature down. Unfortunately, Dong-chan's temperature continued to rise, causing him to faint as well. When Miran regained consciousness, she saw Dong-chan lying unconscious and called his name anxiously, but he didn't respond. As it began to rain, the raindrops fell on Dong-chan, cooling him down quickly. Eventually, he woke up. Relieved and overjoyed, Miran kissed him, and he gently brushed her hair aside. 2 decades ago, Professor Huang was responsible for the hibernation experiment, but after a car explosion, he lost his memory. Professor Jo Kibyum had tried various methods to help him recover his memory, including ice baths and sensory deprivation in the lab. Despite these attempts, Professor Huang's memory remained elusive. In the meantime, the most influential figure in Korea, Chairman Lee, discovered that Professor Huang was still alive. He instructed his associates to investigate the situation discreetly. To everyone's surprise, Chairman Lee bore a striking resemblance to the men in the freezer. To protect Professor Huang, Dongchan and Professor Zhou Qibium decided to bring him to Dongchan's home. Coincidentally, they encountered Miran's parents and Dongchan's family discussing ways to normalize body temperatures. Dongchan explained Professor Huang's predicament, and both families agreed to provide the professor with daytime accommodation at Dongchan's barbecue restaurant and nighttime lodging at Miran's home. At the barbecue restaurant, Professor Huang was tasked with peeling onions, which made him cry and receive scoldings from Dongchan's mother. One day, Chairman Li visited the restaurant incognito. When Professor Huang saw him, some vague memories surfaced. Chairman Li did not recognize him and soon left. Later, Chairman Li approached his twin brother's wife with plans to reveal his identity at the television station. It was revealed that Chairman Li was actually Li Hyungdu, the older brother who had been in hibernation, while Li Sukdu, his younger brother, had assumed his position. Li Hyungdu had been in an accident and placed into hibernation, allowing Li Sukdu to take over. To prevent Li Hyungdu from waking up, Li Sukdu had repeatedly tried to kill Professor Huang. When Professor Huang regained his memory, he realized he was in danger. Learning that the professor had recovered his memory, Li Sukdu had him abducted and taken to a dark room, where he demanded the power source for the hibernation chamber. He warned Professor Huang that failure to comply would result in his death. With no other options, Professor Huang agreed to destroy the hibernation chambers. He entered the lab, disconnected the power source, and warned Professor Zhou Qibium to stay clear. Sensing something was wrong, Professor Zhou Qibium called Dongchan. When Dongchan arrived, he questioned Professor Huang about his actions. The professor explained that if the hibernation chambers weren't destroyed, they would all perish. Dongchan begged him to save their lives and help them return to normalcy. Miran and Dongchan's relationship blossomed after their kiss, and they started dating. However, due to the risk of their body temperatures exceeding 33 degrees Celsius, they could only kiss while in cold water. Their hibernation-altered genes were like a ticking time bomb, continuously endangering their lives. One day, while Dongchan was on the phone with Miran, he suddenly felt lightheaded and had trouble breathing, although his temperature didn't rise. Moments later, he collapsed. Miran, noticing something was wrong, became alarmed. Miran grabbed her bag and rushed out. Professor Yu informed Dongchan that the hibernation genes in his body had been altered and detoxified, but would flare up again after 48 hours. Miran arrived, anxiously checking on Dongchan, who noticed bruises on her tracks. Miran was unaware of any bruises on her hand. Professor Yu pointed out that these were not ordinary bruises and suggested Miran's genes were also starting to mutate. Dongchan asked if there was a solution, but Professor Yu said only Professor Huang had the answer, and he was missing. They went to the lab to search for clues, finding it in disarray. Professor Yu concluded that Professor Huang had been abducted by Li Sukdu. Fortunately, they had made prior arrangements and contacted Li Hyungdu's son, which led to Professor Huang's safe return. Meanwhile, Professor Zhou worked diligently to develop an antidote using notes from Professor Huang's notebook. After a night of intense research, Professor Yu found a potential solution. However, the new drug was untested and might have side effects. Someone needed to be the first to try it. Miran volunteered to be the test subject. The next day, she received the injection before Dongchan arrived. Dongchan was upset to learn that Miran had taken the risk first, feeling it should have been him. Both wanted to face the danger for each other. Dongchan also took the injection. They lay beside each other as Professor Yu explained that while the antidote prevented genetic mutation, it did not yet restore their normal body temperature. They needed to avoid activities that could raise their temperature. Meanwhile, Li Sukdu, posing as the CEO of the company, was conducting a high-level conference when the real president Li Hyungdu appeared. A dramatic confrontation followed as both claimed to be the true Li Hyungdu, causing confusion. Li Hyungdu's son stepped forward to identify his father. An associate of the former chairman mentioned a detail only the genuine Li Hyungdu would know. Panicked, Li Sukdu couldn't provide the answer. Li Hyungdu accurately recited the information, proving his identity. The police arrived, arrested Li Sukdu, and rescued Professor Huang. Dongchan and Miran, who were cooling off in a cold room, suddenly felt overheated when the air conditioning failed. They stayed in the room for 2 hours before emerging. When Dongchan's mother learned about their relationship, she expressed concern about the future implications for their potential children and questioned the sincerity of their commitment. Dongchan was puzzled by her sudden focus on marriage, while Miran, still only 24, had no intention of getting married yet, which confused everyone. Dongchan's mother believed they were unsuitable for each other. Miran, trying to lighten the mood, joked about her serious work ethic, non-discriminatory taste in food, good personality, and the 70 billion won she had at the television station, where Dongchan also earned his salary. Her unexpected humor left Dongchan's family speechless, but she aimed to win his mother's approval. Dongchan's mother, charmed by Miran, eventually accepted her wholeheartedly. Meanwhile, Professor Huang had been tirelessly working to develop a medicine to restore normal body temperature. After much effort, he succeeded and immediately informed Dongchan. Deciding to test the antidote without telling Miran, Dongchan learned that his body temperature would stabilize within a week. He experienced temporary increases in body temperature, pressure, and breathing difficulties, which were part of the healing process. Later, Professor Huang informed Miran about Dongchan's treatment. She felt heartbroken but found solace in Dongchan's assurance that they would soon return to normal life. 3 days later, Dongchan's discomfort eased. When they revisited the freezer room, Dongchan felt the cold for the first time but pretended to joke about it to avoid worrying Miran. A few days later, Dongchan woke up to find his body temperature had normalized. He excitedly shared the news with Miran. However, their happiness was short-lived when a masked attacker stabbed Miran at an event. They rushed her to the hospital but faced a dilemma. Miran's body temperature of 31.5 degrees Celsius made surgery impossible. Professor Huang suggested putting Miran back into hibernation until a more effective drug could be developed. Miran was placed in hibernation again, and Dongchan moved in with her family, becoming an integral part of their lives. They all hoped for her recovery. 3 years later, Dongchan had risen to fame as a producer known for his fiery temper. Finally, Professor Huang developed a new drug. He called Dongchan, who rushed to the lab with Miran's parents. The professor explained that the drug would normalize Miran's body temperature within 30 minutes of injection, making immediate surgery possible. The surgery was successful, but Miran remained in a coma. Dongchan anxiously waited for news until he received a call while out of town. Miran had awakened. He rushed to the hospital and found her waiting for him. Their reunion after 3 years was deeply emotional. Not long after, Dongchan's family gathered once more. His mother inquired about Miran's marriage plans. Miran, still only 24 in her perspective, expressed no desire to marry and revealed her plans to study abroad. Dongchan, concerned about their future and the age gap, was initially upset. Despite his frustration, he realized Miran was the one he wanted to marry. Deciding to support her ambitions, he chose to travel the world with her, embracing their unique journey together. And that wraps up our movie for today. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I look forward to seeing you again in the next videos on the channel. Until then, take care.